You are listening to the Critical Mass Radio Show, Orange County's business talk show, focused on exploring topics of interest to CEOs who are leading middle market companies. With your host, Richard Franzi.
Hello and welcome to Orange County's longest running business talk show. And yes, I am your host, Rick Franzi. And boy, do we have a great guest here for you today. Why do you ask? Because Kathleen Peters is our guest. She's the Chief Innovation Officer for Experian. Kathleen, welcome to the program.
Thanks so much, Rick. It is awesome to be here.
I'm super excited to talk with you. Let's get started with, take us through your background and your experience that has led you to this position today.
I'd be happy to. So I'm originally from the Midwest. So after graduating from the Missouri University of Science and Technology, I landed my first position at Motorola in Chicago. And what I realized in looking back on my career journey, there's been just this common theme of cellular phones, mobile technologies, apps. I really think it all started with that first position at Motorola in Chicago. So I started out as an engineer, but then over the years have made my way into business and product management roles, which I really enjoy and tend to always gravitate toward innovative technology, even in those business roles. So that's sort of a common theme that's led through. And after leaving Motorola, I had the opportunity to work for some enterprise software companies, but then a number of startups. And that brought me out to California, Northern California initially, where I was able to work for, again, those mobile phone kind of technology companies wove a thread through that. So one of those was an early company who was doing some of the very first multimedia for mobile phones. We all expect that. We're used to that on our phones today.
No big deal now.
At that time in the US, there weren't even cameras on phones.
Wow.
So this is dating me a little bit, but this was really exciting because we were figuring out how to use new technology. We knew the cameras were coming because those were on phones in both Europe and Japan, but not quite here in the US. But what would people do with those? How would we share? It all seems so obvious now, but at the time, what kind of content would we engage with? Would people post their own content? So it was a really exciting time to be thinking about new ways to use our cellular phones, our mobile phones. From there, I went to work on mobile operating systems for Palm. If you remember Palm Pilots, and Palm Source is the operating system. That they really pioneered the whole notion of an app store and an ecosystem around mobile phones.
Right.
Again, we think of the app stores on Google and Apple. Palm was doing this a decade before that and building this ecosystem where developers could create apps that consumers could download and use on their phone and building businesses around that. I worked for other companies that were doing network technology and mobile, and then finally a cybersecurity company that was encrypting very high level of encryption, phone calls, video conferences, text over mobile phones. So then it's been almost 10 years now ago, I got a call from a gentleman who was at Experian in a company that was acquired by Experian called 41st Parameter. And they were looking at fraud detection on mobile phones doing banking. So I hadn't worked in finance and banking before in that career trajectory, hadn't worked in finance or banking. However, I did know a lot about mobile application, mobile devices. I knew a lot about cybersecurity types of applications, which not the same as fraud, but you can understand what the connections there would be. So I thought putting those together and thinking about how we could stop fraud as more and more people are using their phones to bank and do other types of transactions, this could be an area for a lot of innovation, a lot of fun, and also something that's very mission and purpose driven. So that was the beginning of my career at Experian. And then since then, I've just continued on this theme of innovation, digital identity, digital fraud detection, analytics, and it's a really exciting place to be.
What an arc of your career so far. Big company, startups. I mean, what a different world to be able to be successful and to learn from both of those, because there are strengths and weaknesses in both kind of organizations, right?
Sure, absolutely.
Take the best from both. that urgency that is all about the early stage companies and figuring out something, the breakthroughs that have to happen to even have a business model.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, no pressure there. Come on, figure it out.
That's right. That's right.
Great. So let's talk about your focus now. That's
Mhm.
a heady title, Chief Innovation Officer. Uh, and then you're in a big, large organization. So what is your focus as the Chief Innovation Officer?
Yeah, so myself and my team, we're looking at business strategy and innovation strategy that can really take advantage of the different types of data assets, analytics capabilities, and services that Experian has to offer. So, as we keep in mind our overall mission, and that's to be the consumer's bureau and provide financial inclusion for all, how can we bring those assets to bear? It's kind of like you said, some of that sense of urgency that comes from the startup or from being an entrepreneur is, how can I use what I have here to make a difference? How can I find something new or some new insights in what I have? So, part of my role is also in helping to steer the activities of the Experian Innovation Lab. We started this lab of data scientists 12 years ago or more, primarily in San Diego, but we now have locations around the world. And that team is really looking on how they can solve in new ways some of those really tough challenges that either our clients are having or that are facing consumers as they go on their financial journeys. How can Experian use that expertise and the insights that we gather from various data sources, internal and externally, to create those insights that'll be valuable to our clients and then also help empower consumers? So, what innovation means at Experian is bringing all those things together and then making it commercially viable for our business to deploy as well.
And therein is the opportunity, isn't it?
There it is.
To make it
Exactly.
commercially viable. Right. And what's it like? Yeah, I'm curious. What's it like to bring innovation to a large organization? But I'm going to hold that question for a second. I'm just wondering, within your own team, where you
Mhm.
have people in multiple locations, probably pretty well accomplished individuals who have accepted the opportunity to work with such a robust organization. I mean, what's that like from a leadership perspective for you, Kathleen?
Yes, I think many of us these days are looking at how we think about leading in this post pandemic world where we have teams that can be virtually anywhere.
Right.
And so I think that's the reality of who we are in the world that we live and work in today. Experian, we have a policy that allows for hybrid working. We have our offices, but we also allow people to work from home and have that flexibility. I'm working from home today. But it's nice to be able to open up the talent pool that we can invite to Experian by having that flexibility. But it also means that as we lead, we need to make this a compelling place that people want to be, that they want to share, and we need to think about culturally how we encourage that environment. So we use a number of collaboration tools. We make sure that we turn our cameras on and we get together
Mm.
to brainstorm and have some of the less structured conversation from time to time as well. But when that works, you have a really fantastic diversity of experience that comes to bear, as well as diversity of ideas from people being in different locations and the world around them, which can lead to a lot of interesting innovation as well.
Innovation's a funny word because it it's the kind of thing where it has to be somewhat spontaneous, but it also has to be somewhat planned. And so you've got to sort of manage through the messiness, don't you, of what
You
innovation
do,
is on the
you
front end.
do. I think we have worked really hard at Experian to help build those habits and that
Mm.
culture of innovation in how we work. You want to leave room for that messiness because that's where some of the creativity has come from.
Right.
But you want to have an endpoint in mind. And that's different than having the solution in mind.
Mm.
So, one of the things that we've really practiced is putting ourselves in the shoes of the end user of this idea. What are the challenges that consumers have? I just participated in an innovation workshop where we had people from various business units and parts of Experian, where we were thinking about the experience of those who are new to country. There's all different ways that
Wow.
people will come to the US,
Right.
right? All, whether they're students, whether they're coming for work, whether they're expatriate business people, there's all kinds of ways that people come to the US new. What are those challenges for those different personas? And we talked about that. And we interviewed some people and we found some empathy for those different challenges. Okay, so we have that information. We want to make that experience better. Can we do that? So that's sort of an end state. How can we address some of those challenges? And then it got really messy and creative and brainstormy and
Right.
throwing out ideas of, well, what does Experian know? Where do we sit? What parts of that journey do we already touch? What parts do we know nothing about? Is there someone that we can partner with? Are there agencies we can partner with? What kind of impact will that have? How will the people feel? You start doing that and it changes a little bit of that messy journey because you have that light that you're trying to get to, but you're not prescribing the way you're going to get there. I think that's innovation.
Yeah, that's well said. Very well said. We may have touched this, but I did want to let the audience kind of get a sense for the magnitude of Experian. And I want to look at my paper because I don't want to misquote it. But you've got challenges to bring innovation, not just within your team, which we've talked about, within the large organization, which is 22,000 employees in 30 countries. So how do you bridge that from your own innovation teams into the larger organization? What's that challenge like?
Yeah, so we start with our regions. That's primarily how we're organized. We do have a strong culture around regional cohesion, but then we're a matrixed organization. As you mentioned, we're in 30 countries, over 20,000 employees around the world. You got your numbers right. And how do we then take advantage of, but also bring the benefits of that global presence? One of the things that we've done tactically in the spirit of innovation is that innovation of culture and innovation thinking with the client need or the personal need at the end. We have educated and instilled that process across the business, rolled that out as education throughout all regions. That allows us to share a vocabulary and an approach where we can come together on common ground. So that helps. That level sets everybody. We're talking the same language. We know why we're approaching things the way that we are. Then tactically, one of the things that's been a really useful tool is hackathons. So in the days before the pandemic, we would get people together in major centers, in our Orange County office in Costa Mesa. We'd bring people in and roll up sleeves with the matching t-shirts, everything. We had really fun in-person hackathon days. When the pandemic hit, we didn't want to lose that spirit, but we had to adapt. It is amazing how people came together virtually for the hackathons. I wasn't sure how it would work, but wow, the creative spirit and the drive amongst some people to find like minds and spend some time working on these kinds of challenges just pushed through and really was successful. And it enabled us to be much more inclusive in hackathons. It used to be if you weren't kind of convenient to the Costa Mesa office and didn't have a way to get there on hackathon day, you would just sort of read about the results afterwards. Now people can have, and they do, form teams with folks from other countries. They meet together on Slack or on Teams, and they're sharing ideas. They're sharing code snippets. We have a contest. We celebrate the winners around the world. And that has turned out to be a real unifying kind of engagement. In fact, our last hackathon that we held, which had a generative AI theme, very timely right now. Right. We did that about a month ago. And just running the numbers, we had well over 4,000 participants. Can you imagine?
No.
Just coming together.
Yeah.
We had great speakers, some of them from outside of Experian, experts in some of the latest tools and technology. Folks got education that way. They were able to ideate amongst their teams. They formed ad hoc teams, and we had a great time with that hackathon. I really love that spirit and how we've not only just continued the idea, but made it into something new and richer and even more inclusive by making it virtual.
Yeah, what a positive unintended consequence.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
I love that. But you did say the words, so I have to ask you, Kathleen. You brought it up, not
That's
me,
right.
but
That's right.
so artificial intelligence. What is your view on it as the chief innovation officer? And then where's Experian with looking at deploying, figuring out how to leverage this new technology?
Sure. Artificial intelligence has been something that has been part of Experian's technology for a number of years. I think if you talk to technologists and scientists, the notion of machine learning, embedded neural networks, other types of AI have been studied and in practice for a number of years. What I think really changed, in my opinion, with the launch of generative AI, companies like OpenAI and other public providers democratized access to the
Mm,
power of artificial
mm,
intelligence. The artificial intelligence itself wasn't new, but suddenly anyone, any of us could download and use this capability for free. So for me, the most similar corollary I would think was like people will say, oh, AI and generative AI is the next internet. I think it's the next browser. So before we had the internet,
mm.
we had DARPANet back in the day, and people, scientists and government researchers would use the internet. Um, when the first Mosaic browser and web browsers started coming out, which made any of us able to really harness the power of the internet, it changed things in a way that transformed the world. I think that generative AI and this democratization, this full availability is going to really change, and we can't even imagine the power it's going to unleash in AI. That's going to have good consequences and some unexpected ones as well. But that kind of gets to Experian's point of view on this. We very much believe in the responsible use of AI. There are so many benefits that AI can bring in terms of productivity, in automating many tasks that are going to free up time and resources for us to get extra creative, and really start to invent more when we have more automation and things in place. So I think Experian has both the responsibility and the ability to lean into this early and to set an example about what that responsible use of generative AI can be. It really means focusing on end users' privacy. It means being good stewards of data. It means paying attention to regulation and participating in the conversation about regulation. These are all things that are rich parts of Experian's history and experience that we will be and are bringing to the generative AI discussion.
It must be, that's a great answer. And it must be, I'm thinking AI, generative AI, sitting on top of a massive amount of data is like innovation's dream come true, right? And you and your organization have decades of deep, robust information from which you can, I would think in some way, culturally, it must be a kind of a turbocharge to the innovation idea within your company. What an exciting time to be the chief innovation officer.
Absolutely. Absolutely true.
That's
Absolutely true.
So let's talk about where you see taking your group within Experian, and sort of if you can speak to where you see Experian going in the future as well.
Sure. Yeah. So with my group, we are really looking at, particularly right now, what are some of the ways that uh, AI is going to change how we work, how we build products, and the kinds of products that we can offer both to businesses as well as to consumers. So we've got a big focus on that. One of the key aspects of what my team needs to do is help prioritize which areas we're going to dig deeper on and build into products to take to market. It's always about that prioritization, and how do we pick those ones that we're going to place some bets on and take a chance. And then we'll be watching those, because if it turns out that that's not the most optimal, we need to pivot to one of the other ones and have that plan. So that's kind of how we're thinking about things in the immediate term with my team. In terms of where innovation is going to go forward for Experian, I said at the top, we really focus on how we can make opportunities more real for consumers and really create that financial inclusion for all. That's not just a tagline, it's part of our culture. So how do we make sure that we are thinking of those products which bring more people into the financial ecosystem? One of those means working with banks, with lenders, with businesses, with retailers, so that they can better understand the risks associated with all different people in the ecosystem. Once they can better understand and manage those risks, understand what they have, whether someone's high risk or low risk, the more information they have, the more analytic tools that they have, the more capability to understand that, the more comfortable they will be in engaging more people. So right now we have too much of, it's very easy to see which people are maybe the lowest risk, and then there's kind of everybody else. We want to make sure that the financial system can see all across the spectrum so that we can open up those opportunities for all. So the innovation is going to be with a lot of those kinds of things in mind.
Yeah, you got me launched there to kind of jump in a second, and I'm sorry about that, but I'd have to believe within all the information that your organization possesses too, that using the latest technology may give you insights that previously you weren't able to discuss, because you weren't able to make there was too much information, you couldn't see it. But with a tool like artificial intelligence, if properly innovated, could release a lot of new information from what you think you've known. Yes. Two other questions off book, if you don't mind. One is, there's got to be a little, I don't want your secrets, but there's got to be a little bit of food fighting within Experian for people who want AI to be used in their area, department, country, whatever. You know what I mean? It's like the hottest thing, and I want to give me some of your resources. I'm sure you're very popular with some of the divisional people or whatever right now.
Yeah.
Because of the productivity opportunity and it's the latest thing type of thing. And then the other question off book, which you don't have to respond to necessarily, is how do you explain innovation to the more, let's say, financially literate parts of organizations, people who maybe are more comfortable in the financial aspect and the spreadsheets of it all? How do you explain that messy magic that happens when you're a little more brainstormy and relaxed about it?
Yeah, you bet. Well, the first question you asked, I think, is isn't everyone clamoring for the opportunity to grab onto the AI opportunities? Absolutely. And that's one of the nice functions that the Experian Innovation Lab serves. So it serves as both a source of ideas, and it can seed those kinds of technology ideas, questions, opportunities within our businesses to then nurture into solving business problems and creating products. So we look at what those ideas are, we prioritize against the resources that we have, we look at a whole picture of what are we best suited to build, but then also what has the most opportunity or can make the biggest impact. Right. So that serves as a bit of a prioritization funnel. The other thing, though, that generative AI and the tools associated with it and the raw compute power that it brings to new challenges is that it doesn't all have to start with the lab. And so more and more of that capability, right, becomes available to these teams. And now you create this flywheel of opportunities seeded, businesses working on it, lab, I want your point of view and we'll build more on this. And suddenly you're flying in ways that may have been a bit, I don't know, maybe somewhat encumbered in the past, which we're really opening up that ability across businesses and the lab and the research. Your second question, I think, had to do with how are we thinking about this financially, perhaps, and the effects AI are having. Is that
Yeah.
basically it?
Yeah.
Yes. So certainly no good financial department would be worth their salt if they weren't saying, where's the productivity? I'm expecting productivity.
Right.
The board is asking me for productivity. And I had a chance recently at one of the speaking engagements I was doing at a conference, and it was an exec conference. And I shared with the audience that as leaders, we need to think about this in two different ways. Is there a productivity opportunity? Absolutely. As leaders, how is your population thinking about that? How are your teams thinking about that? Pretty much across the board, folks, whether they are in the call center or the marketing department or the engineering code development department, the legal department, these people are worried. They're worried that maybe AI robots are coming for their job. They're feeling unsettled. They want to get up to speed on the new technology. They're afraid of being left behind, but they also don't want to be automated away. So there's this real balance, I think, that we have, because if we can execute on this correctly, we are really empowering the team that we have and enabling them to be more creative and more productive than ever before. It's an industrial revolution type effect where we can't even imagine what folks can build given the time and space to do that. We are already looking at, for example, ways that we can use generative AI in our call center. It's not to replace the call center operators with bots. It's to make the real-time searches that our call center folks are doing. We run a call center so that any consumer can dispute their credit report. It's required by law, and we've done this for since the beginning. And so anyone can call in and have a question about their credit score or their credit report, or request their free copy, or dispute any information on that. They call in the call center, they talk to a human. That human needs to search through knowledge databases to find the right answer to present back to that person calling in. Generative AI can make that easier. It can help a new call center employee find the answer better and articulate it in a natural voice. It can help them on the fly seed the information and find a somewhat edge case answer to a problem that's being presented in a faster way, in a way it delivers more empathy. Now suddenly the mood of these calls changes. The job satisfaction of our employees changes. We get great net promoter scores because of those positive experiences. It reduces churn in the call center. All of these things are great business benefits that are productivity benefits that lead to better job satisfaction, as opposed to maybe a fearful scenario that they might find themselves in right now. So I think there's a great opportunity around that, which satisfies the finance needs, but then also can lead to greater job satisfaction for our employees too.
Robust answer, and I really got caught up in it. And thank you for being so thoughtful with your response to those two kind of last minute questions. If someone would like to learn more about Experian, how do they do that?
Go to Experian.com. We have a wealth of resources there for consumers, for businesses. We invite you to check out some of our latest infographics and information about the changing economy, about how AI is affecting things. Please visit Experian.com to learn more.
Top of the show, we had a great guest. Kathleen, you did not disappoint. Thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Rick. It's great to be with you.
And all of you in the audience, thank you for being a part of Orange County's longest running business talk show. If you happen to be an entrepreneur or an executive or a nonprofit leader in the county and you have a story you would like to share with our audience, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm Rick, R-I-C, Franzi, F-R-A-N-Z-I. And until the next time we have a chance to be together, I hope all of your business decisions will move your companies in a positive direction.